Good evening and welcome everyone to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining here with Greg Thompson. I am going to be solo on the Buffalo side, but excited to join a special guest, Antwan Staley of the Dolphins Wire and Antwan Sports. Antwan, how are we doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing, Greg?
Good. Thanks for giving us a couple of minutes here. Talk about this wonderfully exciting game between the Bills and the Dolphins. Before we jump into the specifics, what kind of stuff are you going on? Where can the people find your work?
You find my work at dolphinswire.usatoday.com. Also find me at F1 Sports covering college football as well. But yeah, those are the two places you can find my work.
Excellent. I know you're a lot of fun on Twitter. Really, entertaining follow and very good about going back and forth with the fans. I know that's how you and I connected, and it's been entertaining to watch our teams go in slightly different directions this year. Before we jump into things, just a quick word on cover1.net. Coming over, check out everything we have going on. A lot of great, discussion back and forth. We're an awesome team on the draft. You already had Christian Page, Russell Brown going. We also just brought over Jordan, just bringing in some fantastic people who really know the draft inside and out. We're sending an entire contingent with Eric Turner down to the Senior Bowl. Going to be interviewing some of the potential draft candidates, talking to different people, going over all kinds of things. You still have our team, Fernando and the guys breaking down all the games, talking about different elements we're looking forward to in the future with the Bills. Aaron and I going over all the podcast breakdowns. We'll still break down the Dolphins game here and then get into kind of an off-season schedule, maybe once a week, kind of talking about some of the position groups and the opportunities, what we have going forward there. So still going to be bringing you the best coverage we can every week here as we work forward into what's a very exciting offseason for the Bills. And that's a little bit where we're going to talk about today with Antwan is where are these two franchises heading? What are we expecting of where things are? And I know there's a slightly different phase of things for where the teams are. And obviously the Dolphins a couple weeks ago were right there in the mix of the playoff race and have kind of had a little bit of a stumble setback from that standpoint here. So Antwan, what's your read on what the situation is today? I know there's been a lot of focus on Adam Gase and where he sits on the sideline and what he's actually writing on his clipboard. I've only seen the Twitter version of it, but what's your take on where things stand now?
No, it's kind of weird situation because you have a media group that wants to look forward to the offseason and Adam Gase wants to look towards Buffalo. And yeah, I mean, he's he has a lot, riding on this game. He wants to finish 8-8 and hopefully for him get to 500 so he can possibly remain with the team throughout the offseason. As far as his future, nobody knows except the owner, Stephen Ross, but he at least wants to get to 500 because to him it sounds better than 7-9. But he's in a weird place. The Dolphins were in a playoff position a couple of weeks ago. They beat the Patriots and all was well with the Miami Miracle, and then they laid an egg against the Vikings, and then last week against Jacksonville they ended up losing that by 10 points. So now they come into a game where they need a win, definitely to get off to the right foot. And they're playing a Bills team I think is playing much better than the first time they saw him. Josh Allen's getting a lot of confidence. That defense is elite. In Buffalo, one of the best I think I've seen this year, early on this year. They're playing really good ball, and they did a good job against Tom Brady last week. So they're going to have their hand full this upcoming Sunday.
Yeah, it's interesting where the franchises stand, and it really goes to show you the power of expectations. You have a team in Buffalo who's sitting there at 5-10, have had some really ugly blowout losses, but beyond some of your reactionary, quick trigger fans, the vast majority are very stable with Brandon being comfortable with Sean McDermott, relatively optimistic with Josh Allen. There's plenty of reason for skepticism. There are some people on the fringes calling for people to lose their job and things like that. But in general, I'd say the vast majority are, frustrated that the season didn't go better, but still knew we were going to be taking our medicine this year and are looking okay. You then turn that to a Dolphins team that at one point, like you said, 2 weeks ago, was controlling their own fate, in position to make a potential playoff run, now stumbled a couple games, but are still several games better than where the Bills are. And you have people, running rampant, calling for Gase's job and really out there. What would you say the fan base is on? Are they looking to try to ride this out one more year, whether you're including Tannehill, including Tannenbaum, including Gase and the whole front office? Are you thinking people want to see a fresh start, or are they looking to try to hold this together maybe for one more run?
Look, the feeling I get amongst fans and people that are around the area is they want change, whether it be Adam Gase leaving, whether that be Mike Tannenbaum, whether that be they definitely want to change from Ryan Tannehill, which I understand. He's been there 7 years. You know what Ryan Tannehill is. At this point, it's kind of exhausting. He's 30 years old. He's had injury concerns. He's an average quarterback. It's kind of the same thing with Bills with quarterback went through with Tyrod Taylor. You knew what he was. You kind of just want to move on and try something new. They end up trying Josh Allen, and I actually like Josh Allen a lot. I heard a lot of taking it from a lot of Dolphin fans, but the fact of the matter is the Dolphins want their own. The Dolphin fans want their own quarterback. They want to groom somebody to eventually to become that franchise quarterback, and they don't think Ryan Tannehill is going to be the guy. Neither do I anymore. He's 30 years old. It's time for a new change, and at 7-8. Who could blame them? So that's kind of the consensus amongst fans that they want some kind of change, but definitely starts with Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you bring that up. I think that's actually a really good correlation between where the Bills were with Tyrod and where Ryan Tannehill is. And for any fans, if you want to win a bar bet, ask someone who's older, Ryan Tannehill or Tyrod Taylor, because Ryan Tannehill is actually older than Tyrod, which is he's the weirdest 30-year-old ever. Just the whole position switch in college, and then kind of getting a late start, and then he's had some injury, things here or there. I think that you'd shock a lot of fans if they guessed how old Tannehill is and that he's already 30. But I think that's a good comparison in that it's not neither quarterback are terrible. Neither quarterback are these horrible guys who don't deserve to be in the league. It's just the fact that you know what you've got and you know where they're going to take you, and they're not going to be the difference of you being a great team or not. And that, yes, if you put them in a perfect situation and they have a great offensive mastermind and weapons around them and protection, could they probably lead that team somewhere? Sure, but they're not going to be the difference maker, the reason that you're going to be good. And that's a frustrating position when you're in a position with a flawed roster that doesn't have amazing weapons at every spot, doesn't have amazing protection. And I think that's where the Bills found themselves with Taylor, and now, like you said, where the Dolphins find themselves with Tannehill, and that you're going to have to make some difficult decisions this offseason. I know I read a little bit about it, but I believe you guys did a kind of restructuring of some kind earlier this year, that you might have had an out on Tannehill, but used that because of the Sue situation and some of the other things that he helped clear up some cap space, and it might not be quite as easy to get out of that contract if they want to go that route this offseason.
Yeah, what happened was when the Dolphins were strapped for cash and they wanted to try to pay Jarvis Landry, potentially use that for other money in free agency, but they really didn't have a lot of cap room. So what they did was they converted his base salary into a signing bonus. So what ended up happening with that is it hurts your cap wise going forward into this year. Now they can release him, but it's going to be a large cap hit, and they're going to have a lot of dead money on that. So what probably is going to happen is they're going to have a post June 1st move, which means they'll defer him putting all that money after June 1st, and they'll get more relief then. But yeah, I think that's probably what's going to end up happening. That actually hurt them in the long run, trying to defer that money, but they needed it then because they really didn't have a lot of cap room going into free agency last year.
Yeah, it's funny how some teams, kicking the can down the road, the restructuring, the short-term deals. I look what the Bills did to themselves trying to steal Charles Clay away from the Dolphins. Yeah. It sounded good in the moment, but we've been completely hamstrung by that contract. You couldn't possibly get out of it until this coming offseason is going to be the very first time, literally up until even this year in 2018, it would have cost more to get rid of him than it was to simply let him stay on the roster. So they've kind of kept rolling along. And not that he's been terrible up until this year, the last couple of years, he's still been a serviceable NFL caliber tight end. But, some of those moves where it sounds good in the moment and you're freeing up some space or you're shuffling things around, those checks come due. And that's what the Bills had this season. $55 million in dead cap. They had to undo all those, the Marcel Darius and all the other contracts and things they moved on from with Cordy Glenn and Tyrod Taylor. They just took all that medicine all at once. And I have a feeling that kind of offseason's coming for the Dolphins, whether it's Tannenbaum and Gase making those decisions or someone else. If you move on from Tannehill, that's the kind of offseason you're going to be looking at. In that, I think you have a similar decision with Devontae Parker.
Yeah.
9 million and change, potential with Kenny Stills, multiple other people coming up on contracts that there's going to be some tough decisions. And I think some of those franchises that end up kind of middling it and deciding, well, maybe we can kick the can down the road one more year and give it a try, you end up just hurting yourself worse. And it was, don't get me wrong, this year was rough for the Bills when you're eating what could have been 7 to 10 contributing players on that roster. 55 million, you're talking about 11 $5 million players. That's a lot of contributions that we missed out on, but they ripped the Band-Aid off. And at least going forward now, there's no more nasty contracts or bad money, overpaid players that we can move forward relatively clean.
Yeah, at least for the Bills, they have a plan in mind. The Dolphins, they believe they can compete, and their cap situation is really in a bad state, and they just rather just continue to try to compete. But at some point, you just kind of have to bottom out, and then just be able to take that, like you say, take that medicine, and then you start to rebuild that program. I think the Bills understood that, and it's now this year they're like, okay, we finished 6-10, which I think they will, because I think they're going to beat the Dolphins. And then you say, okay, next year we'll have higher expectations, a little bit more relief, and try to gain a little bit ground in the AFC East. So yeah, I think you kind of have to do that at some point.
Yeah, and we've been having that talk with a lot of fans, frustrated about what does this mean? What are they going to do? And there's no guarantees that you're going to spend that money wisely. There's no guarantees you're going to make the right draft picks. But what the Bills have done is set themselves up to give them the opportunity to do that, and they're going to have a chance to invest and rebuild this roster with the same leadership, the same coordinators, the same front office, the same head coach, all in the same system with a young core that got a ton of reps this year. So that doesn't mean it's going to work out or that you're going to bring in the right people, but they at least have an opportunity to do it, and that's at least something to look forward to.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's dive in a little bit into the game this week. I know it's kind of lost some luster, for at least at one point, the Bills were looking forward to at least maybe playing spoiler and being able to be the reason that the Dolphins didn't make it. Or I know at one point prior to that Vikings and Jaguars game, it looked like this could be the game that would decide whether even the Dolphins won the division or the Patriots, and obviously that's been put to bed now. So as we head into it, it sounds like from everything I've heard, it sounds like most starters are going to go for both teams. I haven't heard anyone being sat for any, sometimes you have even some of the, coin flip kind of health things. They start to sit veterans. It doesn't sound like we're seeing a ton of that. I know one was Xavier Howard. How is he looking? Does it sound like he's going to give it a run?
He's probably won't play because Adam Gase is very weary of playing him because he's not 100%. So what Gase said, if he's not close to 100% or he's still hurting, which he still is, he's not going to play him, which I don't blame him. I mean, this game is really meaningless, to be completely honest, other than evaluation point. That's kind of where you are with both teams, just evaluating players. And Howard, we know how good he is, and there's no point in putting him out there and risking injury. So I have a hard time believing he'll play. Kiko Alonso actually may not play either. He's definitely suffering an ankle and a hamstring injury. He didn't play against Jacksonville. He wasn't inactive, but he didn't play. You may not see him against the Bills either. So they kind of puts a strain on the Dolphins defense, which isn't very good to begin with. And now you're talking about you're losing two key starters on that unit. That's really going to be tough for them on Sunday.
Yeah, I would feel the same way if it was Trey White. We know what we have. Xavier Howard's obviously a big part of the future of that organization, and he's a good, legit number one corner. You don't want to risk that. I know I saw TJ McDonald was practicing, so I don't know where his status is, but obviously I think the teams are going to err on the side of caution. But I hope to at least see most of the names so we get a relatively entertaining game. But if anybody else pops up on the radar here over the next day or so, I wouldn't be shocked if we see another person or two held back. I know the Bills held back both Clay and Chris Ivory last week, and they were both relatively available. So we all interpreted that as, obviously the writing kind of being on the wall that I don't think they're long for this franchise long term, although we did see LeSean McCoy out there playing, not playing well, but he was out there playing. And he was kind of our storyline this week. You guys had I know people going nuts about Gase and sitting on the bench or writing on his tablet or whatever it was. Everybody was trying to read into every possibility was shady this week. And, He did technically get benched for a play. No one has shared anything other than McDermott and Shady both pointing to he needed to be put in check and needed to be held to a higher standard as a captain. So I don't know if it was comments he was making or, the kind of the focus he had on his stats and the frustrating year he's had. But both McDermott and Brian Daboll kind of doubled down on referencing him very specifically as part of the plans for 2019. There's been a lot of ink spilled on, stories about maybe it's time to move on from LeSean McCoy. But I will say the things I heard this week kind of pointed towards him staying with the franchise. So I think that's going to be an interesting storyline for the Bills this offseason, because I think as the weeks have gone on here, more and more people have, for good reason, speculated that maybe he's not going to be here in 2019. So no, for rightfully, obviously he's only got so much time left, and I don't know that what he's looking for, and it's obviously gotten rougher, and the production certainly has dropped off. So that $9 million with only like 2.4 of it guaranteed, $6.5 million back on the cap, you can realistically probably replace him for $6.5 million and maybe even be net savings with what the current running back market is.
Yeah, and get a younger at the position too as well.
Oh Lord, we have to do that either way. So that's one of the reasons I'm cautiously, accepting of the fact that he might be back, is that I want to draft a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick running back anyways, and ease him in. We're already going to be paying McCoy some money, and even if we release him, it's not like you're going to roll in with a 3rd or 4th round running back and nobody else. You're going to need another veteran anyways. Yeah. So, maybe they get a little bit of more of the Kalen Ballage type, and then pair that with McCoy, so we get kind of our thumper first down back guy, and then McCoy works more into 8 to 10 carries, but maybe extensive work in the passing game and use more of his quickness. Whatever they do, we need to get younger for sure. And whether next year's the last year or the following year is. Let's flip over to the other side of the ball. I know, as you said, the Bills, have had the #1 passing defense in the NFL and, have been run on here and there, but for the most part have been okay. Obviously, the Patriots really exposed it with some inside traps last week. One big difference from the Dolphins game till now is losing both our nickelback, Taron Johnson, and our strongest linebacker right now, Matt Milano. Were both a big loss and really have been exposed the last couple of weeks. What are you expecting to see with, who's left here? I haven't had a chance to see Ballage play with Gore out yet, but what are you looking to see from a skill position standpoint in Miami this week?
Well, I expect them to, as far as get Kenyon Drake the ball, whether it be in a passing game or running game. It makes sense some Kalen Ballage there as well. Try to get Kenny Stills involved, and of course Danny Amendola, and you may see a little bit of Devontae Parker as well. It's always, the Dolphins don't necessarily have a #1 receiver, but they have a lot of guys they go to here and there. So I expect it just to be a collective effort. They're going to try to run the football against the Bills. Try to do a little bit of what I'm sure the Patriots did last week, but I don't know if they're going to have that much success because obviously the Patriots are the Patriots, and the Dolphins running game it's been a little suspect, especially without Frank Gore. Frank Gore, despite his age, did a terrific job this year.
It's the hardest running man ever. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I was very surprised when they brought him in. I'm thinking 35-year-old running back. What are they doing? But he did a terrific job of getting those yards between the numbers and the tackles, and they hadn't been able to replace that since he went down. So it's gonna be really tough. It's gonna be a lot of pressure on Ryan Tannehill, especially against that tough Bills defense.
Yeah, and I think the Bills are looking forward to more reps, to see. A lot of people have kind of fallen in love with the undrafted free agent corner we picked up out of Alabama, Levi Wallace. Mm-hmm. He's been getting a lot of reps at cornerback too, and obviously when you're opposite Tre'Davious White, you get a lot of attention. So I mean, people have been kind of going at him, and right now he's actually graded as the #2 rookie cornerback behind Denzel Ward. So
I saw that,
and it's a small sample size, so I'm trying not to get ahead of ourselves here, but looks like a guy that's firmly planted on the roster next year. I hope that the Bills still look to pick up what they thought they were getting in Vontae Davis this year, go spend that $4 to $7 million on a veteran #2 corner, and then hopefully have Levi Wallace as quality depth behind that guy and White, or if he competes with them and Wallace beats him out, that's great. But I don't want to go into next year depending on it. But he's another guy I want to get a lot of look at this week. Corey Thompson is a rookie undrafted free agent out of LSU who's been interesting and getting minutes there behind Milano and playing reasonably well. Obviously some limitations, but doing okay. Obviously, still more reps for Tremaine Edmonds. That's been exciting to watch, but he's had his moments getting caught up. They definitely got him with a lot of what the Patriots do, a lot of eye candy motions in the background, a lot of false pulls and traps, getting caught on inside traps. They pulled their inside linemen really well last week, and
they do.
They use the Bills' aggressive defensive tackles, which you guys saw in our initial game. Being able to go in and really disrupt things, and they used it against them. And if you catch that penetration on a trap and knock him out of the way, all of a sudden you have a huge gap to run through. And they just kept doing it over, 7 yards, 8 yards, 8 yards, 9 yards, 8 yards, over and over again. It was so frustrating. And like you said, that's maybe not the Dolphins' wheelhouse here, but I think that short passing game and guys like, Stills can obviously go deep, but, Amendola and getting some of those things, Drake out of the backfield with people like Milano and Taron Johnson out. That's my biggest concern this week is, trying to stay focused and remain with your attention on this game, putting up good film, those kind of things to still play well and be able to look at what sounds like it's going to be Tannehill and mostly a full complement offensively from the Dolphins.
Yeah, it will be for the most part. Yeah, you'll see everybody play. Tannehill's going to play. Last year, if you remember correctly, Jay Cutler, who was in there, he played a series and then he turned it over to David Fells. That you're not going to find that this year because I think a lot of people criticized Adam Gase for that. And he took it on the chin, so he decided this year. And of course, with his job being on the line, that changes a lot of different things. So,
I think he felt a lot more secure last year.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. Last year was just kind of like a mulligan for him because they made the playoffs in 2016. This year, he doesn't have that same luxury, so it's all hands on deck for the most part on Sunday.
Yeah, well, like you said, I think that's a great corollary for Bills fans to look at. Sean McDermott came in his first year. We kind of caught lightning in a bottle, got some fortunate endings of games that they played tough and pulled out some wins that, maybe they didn't deserve. And then we made a great playoff run. We're able to get into the playoffs anyways to make that, kind of miraculous New Year's Eve game and the end of the Bengals-Ravens game and the excitement of breaking the drought. And then that carried over to this year. And that was last year for Gase, and that, that there was still a lot of positive momentum. They still had a lot of things going the right direction. And now 2019 is going to be on par with what you guys saw this year, and that there's going to be expectation. Now it's going to be your players, your system. There's going to need to be expectation of what's there. And that's going to be the risk of what Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are going into. And that I think a lot of people would like to see them get 4 or 5 years, but realistically in the NFL nowadays, 3 years is about what you get. And that both teams had a playoff appearance, and now Gase followed that up with 2 potentially losing seasons, or maybe he gets to net this one out at a 500 record. And I don't think it's that simple that if he wins, he keeps his job, and if he loses, he's out. But it's probably silly to think that doesn't have some impact. If it looks like the team lays down and isn't competing on Sunday, I could see that reflecting poorly more than the actual result of the game.
Absolutely. You look at last week against Jacksonville. I'm watching the game. They really didn't have any life in that game outside of the first drive of the game. They went down, scored a touchdown. Yeah, okay. The Dolphins are in this. I was a little worried just because they were. It didn't look like they were going to get into the playoffs at the time. I was worried about their energy, and then after that, it just really completely in the dumps. To be completely honest, so they didn't score any points. The offense couldn't move the ball. The defense just kind of looked lifeless. And then, of course, Tannehill threw the pick 6 there as well, and that was pretty much the end of it. So, yeah, it was. I'm curious to see their energy in a game that's meaningless, going up to Buffalo, where it's going to be very cold for their standards, and how interested they're going to be to win that game. And so I'm curious to see how the things are going to come out to shake out on Sunday.
I think that's a great point. It's exactly what's going to reflect on this. And for everything, for the many flaws that the Bills have, there are some significant lack of talent in many areas that they just don't have. And you can see some of the drops or got receivers that can't get open, linemen who can't hold their blocks. Effort and focus and, you know, the desire to play and to focus in on what Sean McDermott is preaching, it has not been one of the issues. There has never been an effort issue, and it seems like the team buys in and wants to do well. We just have some guys lacking in that, you know, probably aren't going to be on NFL rosters next year. And we're simply kind of the best of what we had available here. But amongst that, we did stumble upon the Robert Fosters and the Levi Wallaces and some of those kind of guys that, you know, maybe end up becoming something that wouldn't have had a chance if we had a different roster and we wouldn't have had that opportunity to get them. So I'm really hoping that we see a competitive game this week. I think it's one of those games that we talk about it on the pod all the time. Aaron and I just aren't wired to root for a loss. I just don't have it in me to watch the game and be like, oh, I know it's better strategically if we don't win this game. I just don't have it in me to watch the game and not want them to win. But I know in the back of my mind that the Bills draft range could be all the way up to the 4th pick and all the way down to the 12th pick. And I certainly wouldn't mind something closer to the top 5 than out of the top 10. So I realize that it's probably to their benefit. And I at least like it that I think both teams, although don't have anything formal to fight for, I think both teams want to win. I think that McDermott is just wired that way. He wants to win everything he ever does. Bean's the same way. And I think, like you said, the pressure that Gase wants this for his job and to show that the team is still there, I think that's kind of a referendum on Gase in that, do you see the players going all out, wanting to do everything they can to protect him? Or do you see them starting to make some business decisions in that, maybe I don't want to get hit all that hard right now. Maybe I want to protect myself for this offseason. You know, what if they get rid of me? I think that's going to be telling how the players respond to his message and what he's looking for.
And also, I feel like the Bills they're gonna have a ton of energy because I feel like they want to end the season on a good note, and I feel like them winning would be kind of a momentum boost heading into the off season, especially with a young team, young quarterback, young head coach. I feel like it's important for them to win. It's important for the Dolphins to win too, but for a different reason. Obviously, we're talking about people's jobs and livelihoods being on the line. Whereas I feel like Buffalo, it's a momentum thing heading into next year that gets people excited. And you're playing at home. That's a tough place to play, and the fans, as you know, are rabid there. And it's going to give the team that much more energy. So I definitely think the Bills definitely want to come in there. They're going to have a lot of energy, and they definitely want to win that game.
Yeah, I actually think for as stereotypical as Buffalo winners can be, I actually think it's going to be decent. So not the 31 degrees is nice, but oftentimes these New Year's games can be in the 5 degrees, so 31 isn't bad, and it's not supposed to be snowing. It's actually supposed to be sunny. So I think they're probably going to luck out as good as you're going to get for a December 30th game in Buffalo. 31 and sunny is probably as good as you can possibly hope for. So that's probably a semi-win for the Dolphins, but 31 still a heck of a lot colder than South Beach. So
yeah, definitely. And also, a lot of people don't remember this, but Adam Gase specifically requested the Dolphins to be on the road this year because of the Orange Bowl. The Orange Bowl is going to be played the day before the finale, and they didn't want the field to be chopped up. So he wanted to be on the road. So either they're going to be in a cold weather situation, no matter where they went, whether they went to New England, which would have been probably the worst case scenario, whether you go to Buffalo or go to the Meadowlands. So either way, they were going to have to deal with the cold weather regardless.
Yeah, they're certainly the exception here in the AFC East from a weather standpoint. But I mean, you've watched all these bowl games. I mean, some of these fields are just they're hurting after a long season of dual usage and everything. So I think that's smart, not wanting to roll the dice there with the bowl games and the other complications there. So I think that was a smart request.
Yeah, definitely. And the field has been a mess at times. Throughout the course of the years, I believe it might have been after the Bills game. Actually, they played. I think it might have been the Duke game, and then the field wasn't necessarily very good either. So yeah, it's been rough down there. So yeah, I could understand Adam Gase's position.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll put you on the spot here. I know you already kind of hinted at it, and I'll do my prediction first, and then yours. I'll say I think there's some risk of some of the guys maybe checking out on Gase. I know that some of the ones from legitimate injuries where you have you mentioned Kiko and Xavier Howard and some of those guys that are pretty key cogs for the team there. I think that you run the risk of anyone else that's questionable to be out there. I think you still have a pretty young core for the Bills who are looking to put up film and wanting to play well. I don't think, maybe you have a Kyle Williams, maybe you have Lorenzo Alexander or someone who's, looking to maybe take it easier or kind of protect themselves, but they're both the kind of guys who want to play and be out there with the team. So I do actually expect to see a Bills win. I think they're favored by about 3.5. And I think that's probably right. I don't expect to see a big blowout in either direction. I expect it to be relatively competitive. I think we'll probably see some good plays and some frustrating plays from Josh Allen as we have, but I think we'll see some more highlights. I'm going to predict something around 24-20 Buffalo. I think that we'll see some scoring. I don't think it's going to be, negative here. Obviously the Dolphins could take advantage of a really poor special teams like they did in the last game. So I'm going to predict 24-20 Buffalo.
I can see that. I think the difference is this time, you remember Xavier Howard having 2 interceptions in the first meeting.
Oh, yeah, good point.
He doesn't play. If he's not in there, I definitely think that's a big game changer there for the Bills and basically the Dolphins there as well. And also Josh Allen just running wild, 135 yards. Rushing the last time, and the Dolphins' rush defense has just been abysmal throughout the course of the year. And I don't know if it's going to be any better. I definitely think Josh Allen's going to give them fits, especially with the Dolphins having some key injuries. I don't expect T.J. McDonald to play either. So you're talking about 3 starters on your defense that's not very good anyway. That's not going to play. It's going to be rough for them. I do think the Bills win. I think the Dolphins maybe keep it close with some field goals. I'll say 24-16 Bills.
Yeah, I think that's the ballpark we're going to see. And I won't be shocked if Miami wins. I think that, like you said, whether it's a turnover and maybe there's less of a chance of that without a ball hawk like Howard there. But a big special teams play, you always have guys like Kenny Stills who can break a long play here or there. Drake always is a risk to do that. And that's where I get a little bit nervous if you get Drake isolated with a Corey Thompson out in space, a guy who hasn't played a lot. They're using Raphael Bush as a third safety, as a nickel instead of a true nickel back. So those are some of the things I'm a little bit worried about. You get him isolated on a speedy guy out of the slot or out of the backfield. I think you could see a big play broken here or there. Otherwise, the overall sanctity of the defense has been strong. They've been able to communicate well, keep things in front of them. I don't think the Dolphins are in a position to pound it to them like the Patriots did last week. So I do expect the defense to play reasonably well. Hopefully they get some pressure that's been lacking the last couple of games, not getting the same pressure they did early in the season. As we go to wrap up here, Antwan, what kind of things are you going to be looking at as far as the people can see your work? What are you going to be focused on heading into this offseason, whether it be draft, roster construction, potential cuts? What kind of things are you going to be diving into after the season wraps?
Well, obviously, the quarterback situation is going to be big. We don't know the fate for Gase coming back, but I have a hard time believing that Ryan Tannehill will be back regardless. So, yeah, just looking at the draft, and then the Senior Bowl will be down there next month. I expect to be down there for that, evaluating the quarterbacks and other positions there, and the NFL Combine. That'll be a big deal as well. And just looking at some restructuring, as you hit on some of the guys there. Robert Quinn is another guy. You're looking at Cameron Wake. He'll be a free agent, but does he return? He's been with the Dolphins for 10 years, one of the longest tenure players on the roster, potential Hall of Famer, right there on the cusp of being in the Hall of Fame. So, and he'll be 37 in January. So it's going to be a lot of interesting all season, and we'll hit on that and free agency moves that they potentially might make, and just do it all over the board.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we're going to be looking into as well. Obviously, the quarterback position is a little bit stronger, and that's a really positive, or firmer anyways. a real positive heading into this offseason that Josh Allen's going to get every rep in every mini camp, through training camp, every preseason, every practice, that he's going to get every single top rep. I'm excited about that. Everything's going to be what we can surround him with, and looking into, potential cuts on the offensive line, potential free agency. That's going to be where our focus is going to be a lot on the draft mode, is what linemen can we bring in? What weapons can we surround him with? A lot of people like Noah Fant, a lot of people like, Jonah Williams, Greg Little, where all those things are going to go. And then obviously the depth that's going to go through the draft is a great deep wide receiver class. You don't have your Julio Jones this year, but a lot of, second tier, still strong contributors to be able to go through there. So the one thing, although, like I said, I'm not one to root for a loss for the Bills, I am one to watch the scoreboard and root for upsets. So I'm hoping for, I'd love to see Jacksonville upset Houston, the Jets to topple the Patriots, the Falcons can beat the Buccaneers, or the Buccaneers can beat the Falcons. Any game like that where I can get some help to push those guys further up ahead of the Bills in the draft order, I'll certainly root for that. So that's where most of my attention is going to be this Sunday, besides the Dolphins and Bills game.
Yeah, and I think no matter where you pick in the draft, it's going to be talent there. It's just a matter of can you evaluate the talent? Can you hit on the draft pick? And then once you get it in your system, just develop it. That pretty much that's pretty much what it is. And I'm not big on necessary draft position unless it's from like 1 to 15. That's a bit discrepancy.
Sure.
But
if you're looking specifically for a quarterback,
exactly. Yeah, and the Bills, they're in a situation where they feel like they have their guy. The Dolphins, on the other hand, especially being such a limited quarterback draft, especially with Justin Herbert staying in school, and
it was big.
I don't know if I expect Kyler Murray to go play baseball with the A's still. I know there's been a lot of speculation with that. So you're going to have a very limited draft this year with quarterbacks. So they're going to have to be in a situation where no matter what happens, they may have to trade up to get the guy they want. So, yeah, I think there are two different situations. But nevertheless, wherever you pick, I think you're going to find talent in this draft, especially defensively. There's a ton of defensive players coming up in this upcoming draft. So I think if you can find a guy there, you'll be in good shape.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans, myself included, want offense, but maybe we end up picking the guy who can step in for Kyle Williams, the guy to put opposite Jerry Hughes. Maybe it's a Greedy Williams to put opposite, Tre'Davious White. So I kind of hope that they find a way to make that defensive. I'd love to see them jump up ahead of the Giants, the Buccaneers, the Jags, some teams who might be looking quarterback. Maybe give them an opportunity to trade back, pick up some more assets, and then go offense. But we'll have plenty of time to dissect that for the 3 months leading up to the draft. So just want to say thank you. Appreciate you giving us a little bit of time here. Anything else for the fans, where they can find you on Twitter? Let them know what your handle is and what to look for there.
Antwan Staley is my handle, ANTWANSTALEY. And you can just find out. We're just gonna do some previews of the Bills Dolphins game this upcoming weekend, just for like the players, their perspective going into the game, the way they're feeling playing a game that's not really gonna determine whether they get in the playoffs or not. So you could just view that there at my Twitter handle at Antwan Staley, and also at DolphinsWire.usatoday.com.
Awesome. Thank you for the time today. The same thing. You can find me on Twitter at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. Have a lot of fun going back and forth with all football fans, especially Bills fans. Try to follow back everybody and have a good time out there. But looking forward to everything we have coming up here. Sad, bittersweet to have our last game of the year for the Bills and the Dolphins. Hopefully in some coming seasons we'll see some further games beyond just the last regular season game. But this year this is going to be it. So we'll do another post-game wrap-up here and go forward with everything that we have. But thank you for your time again, Antwan. Love talking to you today. And for all the fans out there, have a great day. Hope you guys enjoyed some happy time with your family and friends over the holidays. And we'll talk to you again soon.